is Sergeant Joseph Tarajos. That was Joe's motto. The best is yet to come. And one of the last things that he ever said to me on his final trip to the VA hospital in Temple, Texas. Joe was a retired sergeant major with 3 bronze stars, a silver star, and a Purple Heart. He was in Vietnam. He also married my ex-wife, so I jokingly referred to him as my husband-in-law. Joe loved to work with wood. He'd build altars for churches. He carved images in wood, and he doubled the size of his house in Greene all by himself. He liked to cook, too. I think Joe could have cooked a combat boot and made it taste like prime rib. He was married to his wife, Jackie, for 45 years, and she finally died on him. And after that, he lived alone until he met my ex. She had a heart condition and no medical insurance. Joe fixed that. He married her, gave her his benefits, literally saved her life. Life, however, is never fair because as Joe tinkered in his wood shop with his lungs damaged by Agent Orange, which was doing the job it was designed to do, and the Viet Cong could not accomplish, his own government finished the job. Now, I came back from California, and he put me up in his garage apartment as he worked on his old house, which was, of course, never done. I watched over the property for him. At first, Joe didn't know how to take me. I'm fresh out of California. I got a ponytail down in my butt, and I'm setting up a full bar in my room, and I have an endless stream of visitors dropping by to have drinks and talk Texas politics. Being from Buffalo, New York, Joe didn't even think Texas had politics, and any thought of secession was beyond him. A year or so later, he found this paper called The Damn Good Times, and he began to understand a little bit more about the Texas situation. Well, as we talked over 3 years, Joe developed a dream. I told him tales of the California desert, and he got a yearning to travel to Ocotillo Wells. The last time he was there was in the 60s, and then he was driving a tank. But he wanted to drive a dune buggy. The clock, however, was ticking for Joe, and what they thought was Parkinson's originally finally ended up called Alzheimer's, and then finally they got down to what it really was, cancer. Agent Orange had ravaged his entire body by this time, and with each trip to the VA, they developed a new diagnosis. Ocotillo Wells drifted farther and farther away. During this time, he bought a home in Brigham City, Utah, and he called it the Big Blue House because it was. He shuffled between the VA in Salt Lake City and the VA in Temple, trying to replace the blood that Agent Orange was slowly drinking. During the devastating CPS case that my grandchildren had endured, this left them, of course, destitute. And old Sarge fixed that, too. Even if he was too weak to walk into a courtroom, he hired lawyers and appeared in court via FaceTime. He adopted his 5 little buddies, as he called them, and set them up for life. New baby became Joseph Stephen Tarajos. And if you don't believe that, just ask him. He'll tell you. From that point, it was endless trips to the VA to get blood and endless hours laying on the couch. He finally got a hover round. At first, he couldn't operate it until I showed him it steered just like a tank. He could get to the car, but he could not drive, and he found that relatively humiliating that his husband-in-law had to load him up in the passenger seat for yet another trip to the hospital. A week before he died, Joe was looking for an RV to take to California. He knew better. It was for his little buddies. When I loaded him up for his last trip to the hospital, he told me, "Men don't cry." He checked into the VA that Friday, and he sunk lower and lower over the weekend, and on Monday he called me. He wanted an order of chicken wings and his chihuahua. The nursing staff let the little dog in, and Joe fed it chicken wings. He told the nurse that I was his best friend. So when the priest came to administer last rites, Joe, unable to come up with any sins to confess, he asked me what direction Ocotillo Wells was in, and I pointed through the window toward the west, and he turned his head that way and said, "The best is yet to come." Well, I took the little dog and left to go home. They transferred Joe to ICU later that day as I was driving home. An hour later, he looked at his wife and said, "Oh, baby," and he quietly slipped away. When I got home, I got the single text, "He's gone." Over the next few days, there was the usual rush to finalize all the paperwork. Joe wanted to be buried at Arlington, but he got San Antonio. But a week later, I was napping alone, and I heard his voice distinctly call my name. W? He always called me that. It's kind of a joke. He was a lifelong Democrat. And then I clearly heard as I woke, the best is yet to come. I got up and walked to the front door, and I looked to the west, and with great sadness, I realized that Joe never got to Ocotillo Wills. But then it hit me. Maybe he did. The best is yet to come. So that was Wilbur's Memorial Day tribute, and I got through it better this time than I did at breakfast.
Yeah, I mean, that echoes an experience that I had with my friend that we kind of described earlier.